Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to unpack a genuinely fascinating and honestly highly unorthodox piece of economic source material today. We're traveling back to early 2012, which was a time when Japan was gripped by profound, really suffocating economic anxieties. The text we're examining today took those exact terrifying vulnerabilities and literally flipped them completely upside down. We're going to look at how a situation that felt utterly hopeless for an entire nation was radically reframed from a defensive nightmare right into a highly aggressive strategic playbook. It really forces us to ask, how do you save an economy when its people are totally paralyzed by fear? Well, let's find out. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, the 2012 economic paralysis. 2, a radical macroeconomic reframe. 3, strong yen as an asset. 4, the TPP agricultural pivot. And 5, the Great Japan Federation. Starting right off with Section 1, the 2012 economic paralysis. To truly grasp the paradigm shift we're about to discuss, you really have to put yourself in the shoes of a Japanese citizen or policymaker in early 2012. You've got this cascade of seemingly fatal threats. First, the country was shrouded in overwhelming economic gloom following the devastating disasters of 2011. And on top of that massive recovery burden, by early 2012, Japan was facing a historically strong yen. Now, standard consensus viewed this as a complete disaster because it made Japanese manufactured goods unbelievably expensive to sell overseas, threatening the absolute core of their export economy. And if that wasn't enough, you had the impending Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the TPP, which the public largely viewed as an absolute death sentence for Japan's heavily protected, traditional local farming industry. So when you combine a battered, post-disaster economy, an export-crushing currency, and the looming threat of cheap foreign imports destroying local agriculture, you end up with a nation entirely and desperately on the defensive. I mean, everyone from the top economic advisors down to the everyday consumer believed their core economic drivers were completely hopeless. So the monumental question becomes, how do you possibly pivot out of this? That brings us to Section 2, a radical macroeconomic reframe. Now, what's really interesting about this is the source itself. Specifically, Chapter 3 of our source material, recorded on January 3rd, 2012, explicitly targets turning both the strong yen and the TPP into massive opportunities. Now, I do need to add a quick caveat for our explainer today. This text is famously presented as a channeled spiritual message from the legendary British economist John Maynard Keynes. While that's a highly unique, definitely unconventional premise, we're going to intentionally set aside the religious and spiritual framing today. We don't take sides or endorse specific viewpoints here. Instead, we're impartially focusing entirely on objectively analyzing the highly aggressive, contrarian macroeconomic strategies it actually proposes. Because honestly, the economic arguments alone are a total masterclass in crisis management. The contrast here is just striking. The prevailing status quo was strictly defensive. The government, the central bank, they were practically paralyzed by fear, trying desperately to artificially suppress the currency just to save traditional exporters. The book's proposal, however, is purely offensive. It uses lateral thinking to completely flip the script. Instead of trying to fix a broken defensive line, it asks, hey, how do we weaponize the current economic landscape to our absolute advantage? Let's look at exactly how they do that in Section 3, strong yen as an asset. Instead of mourning the strong currency as this fatal blow to export industries, the text fiercely pushes back. It argues that a strong yen is actually concrete evidence that Japan has evolved into a fully mature, wealthy nation. The logic here is pretty rock solid. Only a truly developed, powerful economy can command that kind of currency strength in the global market in the first place. Therefore, trying to artificially suppress it, that's actually a massive step backward. You shouldn't mourn it, you should use it. And this brilliantly illustrates the standard economic theory on how you actually turn that supposed liability into a weapon. Step 1, you take that incredibly strong yen and you use its massive purchasing power to buy overseas resources and foreign companies at a steep discount. Step 2, you massively expand your imports, bringing in high-quality, incredibly affordable goods from all around the world. And Step 3, you use that massive influx of cheap foreign goods to stimulate a huge domestic consumption boom. You're using the strength of the currency to enrich the domestic populace and acquire global assets, rather than just endlessly worrying about how many cars you can sell abroad. Which naturally leads us to Section 4, the TPP agricultural pivot. Much like the strong yen, the TPP was viewed with absolute dread, specifically by the agricultural sector. But the source text argues that playing defense by forming bloc economies is fundamentally a losing game in the 21st century. The era of overprotecting domestic agriculture and hiding behind high tariffs to keep cheap imports out is simply over. It's an outdated model, and all it does is stifle innovation and growth. So instead of being terrified of cheap agricultural imports ruining local farmers, the text proposes a massive strategic pivot. Go on the offensive. Japan should actually capitalize on free trade. But, how do you do that if your crops are too expensive to export? Well, by exporting what Japan actually excels at: highly advanced agricultural technology and intellectual property. The strategy is to go out into the world, teach high-yield, efficient farming techniques overseas, and essentially guide and manage global agricultural production, rather than just hiding behind a wall and hoping the rest of the world ignores you. And that grand vision brings us to Section 5, the Great Japan Federation. So the crucial point is how this all comes together into a vision termed the Great Japan Federation. Now, we have to be very clear here. This is not some traditional, archaic military empire. Not at all. It envisions an expansive, highly modern economic network. It's a sphere of influence built organically on shared knowledge, agricultural guidance, and technological leadership. It's all about Japan leading by teaching, investing, and guiding global production, utilizing the very trade agreements and currency strengths they were initially so terrified of. When we look back at this text today, regardless of its highly unconventional origins, the analytical framework is undeniably fascinating. It shows us that flipping fatal threats into unbelievable opportunities fundamentally changes the rules of macroeconomic engagement. A radically optimistic lens, combined with a willingness to just completely abandon defensive postures, well, that might just be the ultimate strategic playbook for any nation facing a crisis. It really leaves us with a powerful thought to chew on. When you, or your country, or your business, are faced with a supposedly fatal economic threat, do you just hunker down and build a higher wall to hide behind? Or do you take a step back, look at the board laterally, and change the rules of the game entirely? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer of this truly unique source material. Keep questioning the consensus, keep looking at your obstacles from new angles, and I'll see you in the next explainer.